Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, a gadget, it's my review of the Penstar Enote tablet. So this is an interesting device. I've been using it for a couple of weeks since Penstar very kindly sent it to me, and I've really enjoyed using it, but it definitely has some limitations. I'll leave a link in the description to this video to the Penstar site where you can buy it should you be interested by what I tell you about it. And it's definitely got a lot going for it. They've made some interesting choices with this. So this is, as you can see, an e-ink tablet. So it's basically a note-taking device. It's running on Android, but unlike some of the other like e-ink Android devices I've talked about on the channel, it doesn't have quite the versatility. It's very good at the basics. It's very good at what it's designed to do, and that is to be a digital notepad. But at other things, I think it's not quite as good, and I'll talk in the video about why that is. But the things it does well, it does really, really well. So I've enjoyed using this as an e-reader, and I've really enjoyed, to my surprise, using it as a digital notepad. I've never really tried using a digital notepad before. I've got other devices that you can, write on. And I've tested out the writing capabilities of them for reviews and things like that, but I've never actually felt like using them on a day-to-day basis. This one I've used every day for the last couple of weeks. I've been using it as my work notebook, and I've found that it's actually really effective in that, as a way of keeping track of things. So I've been using it every day to make like to-do lists, to write notes when I've been in meetings and things like that, and I found it very, very useful and effective to the extent that I am going to continue using it. But as I said, there are some limitations to it, so I'll talk about those in a bit. So let's start with the physical design of it. They've made, as I said, some interesting choices with the design. The two most interesting choices are the fact that there is no light, so there's no like front light on the screen like you often get on e-ink devices. And the other thing, which is really unusual, is there's no touch layer. So when you think about like the original Kindles, they were like that. They didn't have touch screens, they didn't have lights. And e-ink devices have evolved over time, so that having a touch screen and having a light is like commonplace now. We expect it now. The Penstar doesn't have either of those. So I think partly they've done that to reduce costs. But it's also, I think, a deliberate decision to make this feel more like a paper device. So the fact that the light isn't there hasn't been a problem for me at all. I've been using this, as I say, for work. So I've always been using it in well-lit environments. The fact that it doesn't have a touch screen, I've got used to. So initially I was finding I kept on, touching the screen, expecting it to do things, and it didn't. The only way you can control this device, apart from with the buttons that are down the side, is with the included pen. And the pen works really, really well. So I think those design choices kind of work. I think I can see why they made them, and I think they've done a good job of creating a device that is very usable despite the limitation of not having a touchscreen. So what you've got is these buttons down the side. So the buttons are they're like dynamic. They do different things depending on what application you're in. The top button always gives you a list of what the buttons will do in the particular app that you're in on the device. But generally speaking, you can use them for things like changing the page, changing whether you're using the pen or the eraser with the stylus, adding a new page to a notebook, that kind of thing. So they're actually, once you get used to them, they work really, really well. I found it difficult, and this is just my age and my memory, I have found it difficult to always remember what button does what, but you've always got that option of pressing the set button at the top so that you can see. So the buttons work really, really well. I found them, really responsive, and certainly for doing things like turning the pages, they work brilliantly. The pen also works really, really well. So when you are writing on the device, there is a very slight lag between you writing and the e-ink appearing, but it's almost unnoticeable. It's that close. So I found the writing experience really, really good. And as I say, I've been using this to take notes over over the last couple of weeks, and I've really come to, it's become part of my workflow when I'm at work. So let's talk about that note-taking experience then. So there is like a whole notes section to this tablet. You can create your own notebooks. You can give those notebooks a cover, so you can have as much kind of configuration to those as you like. You can choose the templates for the pages. Then there are loads of different templates you can choose from. I've ended up really just using two for the most part, one of which is like a page with just like light dots on it, so you can kind of orient yourself on the page, I guess. And then the other one is just a to-do list, and that all my notebooks are just constructed of those types of pages. But there are loads of different options. Once you've started a notebook, you can move the pages around, you can move them, backwards or forwards, you can add pages wherever you want, you can delete pages. So it's really, configurable. And I found it's great to have this kind of notebook that just grows over time. And I can change the order of the pages, so I can always get to the ones that I need to get to quickly, easily. The lack of, being able to like flip through the pages with your finger is something of a limitation. But as I say, the buttons work really, really well. And you can also just click on the top to get a view of all of your pages to quickly move to one. So yeah, as a notebook, I found it really, really useful. The pen works well. It's got built-in like optical character recognition, so you can translate what you've written on the page into text, and that works really well as well. You can also synchronize it with an app, like an iPad app. So I've installed the Penstar app on my iPad, and I think there are like Windows and Android versions as well. And it synchronizes my notes. I've got a stylus for my iPad, and I can write on my iPad, and then it shows up as handwritten text on here, and I can manipulate that text. I can delete it. I can scribble over it, whatever. So that works very, very well. And the actual pen with the writing. So there are loads of different like pen options. You can have like pencil, ballpoint pen, marker pen, things like that. You can select different colours on here, and if you do that, when you look at it on your iPad, the text will be in the colour that you've chosen. There's an eraser on the back of the pen, which works really, really well. There's also a button on the side of the pen which you can use to, like, if you hold that down, to quick change to another type of pen. So I've had that set to marker. So if I use the pen normally, it's just like a biro, but if I hold down the button on the side, it becomes a marker. And again, all of that just works really, really well. It's seamless, and you get used to it after a while. The other thing you can use this for is reading books. So I've got some books onto here, and I found it really good as an e-reader. Having the buttons works well. I really like page turn buttons on my e-readers, and they work brilliantly when you're reading a book. So I've got some like PDFs and things like that on here, which I've been reading, and I found it a really good experience. And the fact that you don't have those additional layers between you and the screen that you would get if you had the touch layer, or if you had a light layer, means that the text really pops. It really feels like it's written on the device rather than being displayed to you by the device, if that makes sense. So yeah, as an e-reader, I found it really, really good. The built-in e-reading app works very well. You've also got like a split screen mode, so you can have the book you're reading on one half of the screen and a notepad on the other, and it will just anything you scribble in there, it will just save to your notes. So that works well, and it creates it creates a notepad for you with the name of the book if you go into that option. So just it works well. It's well thought through. Right, let's get onto the problems with this device. Well, not problems, limitations. So it doesn't have the Google Play Store installed. A lot of these e-ink devices, like the ones from books and companies like that, have the Google Play Store installed, which makes it really easy to install other apps. There is no Google Play Store on the Penstar. I've tried to install the Google Play Store on here, and I haven't managed to get it working. I know at least one other person who contacted me said they'd managed to install the Samsung Galaxy App Store on here, but I couldn't get that working either. So I think there are ways to do that, but I couldn't get it working. What you can do, though, is you can install apps onto here. So you can download an APK file, like an Android app file, transfer it onto the device, and I've managed to get like the Kobo app, for example, working that way. So I just downloaded it onto my laptop, transferred it to the device, opened it, and it worked. But that said, there were some limitations with that Kobo app. So I couldn't get into the menus on the Kobo app properly. I could read books on it, but there's like when you're reading a book, there's like a menu you can pull up normally, which allows you to change like font size and things like that. Now, in order to do that, you tap on the middle of the screen. And I found even with tapping on the pen on the middle of the screen, it just didn't work. It was trying to highlight text rather than recognising it as me wanting to bring up that menu. So there are definitely limitations of not having touch, normal like finger type touch on this device, which might not be obvious until you use certain apps. So it's definitely more difficult to get apps on here, and because of that lack of touch, which apps expect, because you can only use the pen to manipulate the screen, I think a lot of apps probably won't work quite how you would expect them to. So that is definitely a limitation to consider going into it. The other thing I found is if I plug this into my MacBook, it doesn't show up as a device. I can't transfer stuff onto it. Now, there is a really good inbuilt app for like transferring stuff over Wi-Fi, which works really, really well. So you just tap into that. It opens up a little app, and then on your laptop, you go to a certain web address and you can just really easily transfer. You just upload files and it transfers them immediately onto the device. So that works really, really well. That's how I've got books and things like that onto it. But I haven't managed to get it working just by plugging it in. So there definitely are some limitations. And it hasn't been, as I say, as versatile as some of the other ink devices I've used because of that. I think that lack of touch, the lack of and a built-in app store. It just doesn't give you the range of options that devices like, a books device will give you. But that said, when it's doing the things it's designed to do, which are be a notepad and be a document reader, it works really, really well. And I've been very, very impressed with it. As a notepad in particular, I've really enjoyed using it. And as I say, I'm going to continue using it. So those are my thoughts on the Penstar Enote tablet. I think it's an interesting device. I think they've made some interesting choices, and I think the basics it does really, really well. But as I say, it does lack that versatility that some other similar devices have. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.